for those 20% that want to go further and adopt strategies like yours to, to really leverage these things, there's a lot of opportunities out there. I worked for Google as a quality rater for about a year just to see if I could do it, if they would hire me. It wasn't a very interesting job, but I learned a lot about how Google evaluates sites internally. So many clients that we work with have seen drops in Google organic traffic, but they're doing great still because they're getting the right kind of traffic. Sites that aren't trying too hard with their SEO tend to perform better than the sites that are a little over aggressive with it. And I think that's important to keep in mind.
54. That's how many separate studies, patents, and experiments my guest today read, so you don't have to. Hey everyone, welcome to the AI SEO Insider podcast. I'm Chris Raulf, an AI SEO expert and the founder of Boulder SEO Marketing. This podcast is where we cut through the AI hype and where I talk to people who are getting real results. My guest today is Cyrus Shepard. About a month ago, he published a fascinating evidence-based analysis of AI citations. Rather than me list his entire resume, I'd much rather hear it from him. Cyrus, welcome back to the show. Last time when we spoke, you headlined our AI SEO and GEO online summit, and I've been looking forward to a proper deep dive ever since. Before we get into the research, please give everyone the quick version of who you are and, what do you do and how you got here.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Happy to be talking to you, someone who knows AI and SEO as well as you do. Always happy to chat. A little bit about me. People primarily know me from my days at Moz, where I led SEO, for the company, which at the time was the largest SEO company in the world. And I'm kind of known for running a lot of experiments and data studies, trying to decode Google's algorithm. And now with AI and AI overviews, AI mode, we have a whole new surface areas to study. So I run my own independent consultancy now, publish a newsletter talking about SEO and AI and just trying to figure out what's going on so businesses can succeed. And that's why we're here today.
Awesome. And then you're also a former Google quality rater. So I think I have a couple of questions about that later on in this podcast interview.
Yeah, I worked for Google as a quality rater for about a year just to see if I could do it, if they would hire me. It wasn't a very interesting job, but I learned a lot about how Google evaluates sites internally. So that informs the work that I do today.
I mean, great insights, right? And then I'm going to put the link to the information that we're discussing here in this conversation right below in the description field of this YouTube video, including the link to the Zyppy Signal newsletter. Definitely check that out. Cyrus, let's get into it. All right, let me start with this. So you called out the fake top 10 gurus right in the piece and then named the researchers you actually trust. That sort of stood out to me. Why lead with that?
Well, I wanted to give credit to the people who actually are doing the work, the experimentation work. This is sort of what I did was sort of a meta-analysis. AI citations are so new that I was literally able to pull every study that's been done since, AI popped into existence a few years back. And it was something like, it was less than 100 studies. And I narrowed it down to like 54. But I didn't do any original research myself, so I wanted to give credit to the people like Dan Petrovic, Kevin Indig, and others who are actually out there doing original research, a number of academic researchers as well, and give them credit, because this is not my original research here. I just tried to gather all of the evidence and do a meta-analysis, as it were.
Well, you did a great job. Let's actually talk about the research in plain English. So let's actually set the table for everyone listening. In plain terms, what actually is an AI citation and why should a business owner who isn't an SEO care whether they get one or not?
Yeah, so there's a couple different places that you can appear in AI answers. One is within the answer itself, like if you're asking for recommendations, for best dentist in your area, or what shoes should I buy, or stereo should I buy, and it will recommend stuff. The citation are the links that ground the answer, where if you want to find out more information, click on this link and it'll send you to a website. In Google AI overviews, they're usually on the right. In ChatGPT, they're, you scatter throughout. Every AI engine has its own way of doing citations, but citations are the links that lead to references, basically. And there is some evidence that people click on those not as much as regular search results, but they do result in some traffic, and it gives your brand some visibility. And generally, it's a good place to be. It indicates that you're doing something right within the AI environment.
And then, so here, I kid you not. So we have implemented a pretty sophisticated generative engine optimization strategy here at Boulder SEO Marketing. And guess what? We're now getting about, I would say, at least 50% of our leads through AI search. I'm asking everybody, how did you find us? And like, well, you were cited in ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. So this stuff is actually working. That's what we're going to talk about here today.
Yeah, that's incredible results. And I think there's a lot of practitioners, not a lot, there's a few practitioners like you who are on that leading edge of figuring this stuff out. And everybody else is still kind of playing by the old playbook of SEO basic optimization, which still works, but
Yeah.
there are some extra things that we could be doing that I'm glad to hear those results.
Yeah, I agree. And before we started the recording, right, I told you I was speaking at a conference in Berlin, Germany last month, and I called the audience like, hey, who's doing this or that? And I'm excited to share that usually 1 or 2 out of 10 people are actually doing the stuff that we're doing. So, and it's not rocket science. You just have to put in the work and obviously understand how to do it, but it's driving real results. So that said, you scored 23 factors on an evidence scale out of 10. Please explain how that scale works, because I think evidence-based is the whole point here, right? How is this different from the hot takes flooding LinkedIn these days?
Yeah. So what I did is I narrowed everything down to 54 studies, and a lot of the studies were looking at some of the same phenomenon, some of the same, we call them ranking factors, but using different names for them, or they were describing something in one engine that was basically the same thing as the other engine. And I just sat down, and this literally took 2 weeks because I did everything by hand, just putting everything in a spreadsheet and marking what lever the study was pulling and what kind of results it was, how strong the results was, and just creating a giant heat map. One thing I need to point out is this is evidence-based. This is not the totality of the AI citation universe. You were just talking about your strategy. There are likely things that you're doing, Chris, in your roadmap that are working that is not captured within this study, simply because it hasn't been studied at a large scale, through academics or whatever. So there's lots of things you could probably be doing that aren't captured, but this captures the evidence. And then everything is hand weighted. The scoring, how many times did it appear? What is the strength of evidence? I use some AI to help me, stack rank some of these things. And the final result was something like 23 or 24 factors, which had either very strong evidence or, all the way down to pretty weak evidence.
Cool. For anybody who, this topic is not for them, they're like, oh, should I listen to this? If you would have to give them the one sentence TLDR, what's the one thing you want them to part with from this conversation?
So interestingly, the two big takeaways I would give to anybody: you don't have to overthink it. One, make sure your pages are accessible to, AI engines, which for SEOs that have been doing this a long time, that's kind of like SEO 101. But now we see so many people blocking AI crawlers through Cloudflare or robots text. Their IT department put in something in their robots text and they're unaware of. So that becomes a big an actually bigger factor than we want it to be. The other thing is basic SEO, that a lot of the things that we've been doing for many years still work pretty well. The number one correlated factors were, how often you appear for the main query, how well you rank, and how well you rank for what we call fan out queries, and ranking for multiple queries, fan out queries, has a multiple effect. There's some really interesting research, mathematical research, that the number of times your page can appear for multiple queries increases your chances of being cited at least once. So just doing your basic SEO and really well is going to work for 80% of sites that don't have to do a lot extra. But for those 20% that want to go further and adopt strategies like yours to, to really leverage these things, there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Completely agree. For me, it's 80% is same old, boring stuff, right? And 20% is different. And again, it's not rocket science. We briefly spoke about Google I/O before we started the recording here. So I hadn't been able to watch all the sessions. I'm sure you probably watched some of the sessions. You probably read some of the, the summaries. What's your overall take, big picture? A lot was announced. Like, if you don't want to go crazy, like, what's your take for somebody to stay sane with all the things that got announced?
Yeah. So when Google I/O, and this kind of happens every time there's a Google I/O, they come on stage, they have these wonderful product demos, and they say how everything is changing. And that's exactly what happened this time. And the message that a lot of SEOs and marketing folks got was that everything is going 100% AI. People are never going to visit your website again. Google's just going to take all the answers and the traffic. But I think we have to take a step back and realize that Google I/O is a marketing event for Google. It's for Google investors. They make a lot of promises and flash that don't always pan out. And the reality on the ground is the months after Google I/O in reality look a lot like the months before Google I/O. So it's a little bit more aspirational. So I think we can say Google is definitely moving in a very different search experience, but the timeline is more like 3 to 5 years and not the next 12 months, is what I would take away from it.
Cyrus, thank you. You just calmed my nerves. That's what I needed to hear from somebody like you. One thing that stood out, right? Personal intelligence just expanded to nearly 200 countries, which means two people get totally different results for the same query, pulling from their own Gmail and photos. What does that do to the idea of ranking for a citation at all? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So there are some folks doing some pretty interesting work in that area. Mike King, Garrett Sussman over at iPullRank did an experiment where they were emailing clients with their brand recommendation in the email itself. And then they tested it,
Wow.
and clients who were getting that email would see iPullRank recommended much more often in their AI overviews and AI answers. So I think we're going to see some techniques where brands start to use information like this to personalize those results. I think now is kind of the wild, wild west where you can influence these things pretty easily. Eventually, it will be overplayed by marketers, and then Google will have to figure out what separate the spam signals from the legitimate marketing. But right now, yeah, AI results are highly personalized. You often don't see the same result ever twice, but there are some opportunities there to influence those things through things like email and other channels.
I bet there's going to be no shortage of new black hat strategies and methodologies we can even imagine right now, right?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think what Google is trying to do is, and how we should think about this is, if we can get customers and leads and potential, business acquisition targets to engage with us, to engage with our website, to seek us out, those foundational signals of marketing, marketing 101, that's what they're trying to do with this personalization. So that's what we should be trying to achieve ourselves.
Yeah, agree. Let's talk about the heavy hitters and why foundational SEO still wins, as we already alluded to earlier. So search rank scored a 9.4. That 38% of AI overview citations from the top 10 is the stat I keep quoting. Are people massively overcomplicating AI SEO when the real answer is doing foundational SEO better? We already briefly spoke about that. Can you talk more about, why foundational SEO is still so important?
Yeah. So, when OpenAI released ChatGPT a while back, it was a lot, when they first introduced it, there was a lot of hallucination. You couldn't rely on it so well. The training data was a little old. And what's happened since that time is everything has become about grounding the answer. And so literally every AI engine now has its training data, but they ground the answer with real world information. And that's usually Google search results. Sometimes it's Brave search results, things like that. But they're grounding it in search results, and so Google has a huge advantage here with understanding the search ecosystem, and those answers, those top ranking results for the query and the fan out queries are what informs 95% of AI answers these days. So just
Yeah.
ranking becomes incredibly important.
Absolutely. Let's talk about fan out. Fan out rank scored a 9.3. A lot of people still think AI processes their single query. Could you please explain fan out and why ranking for the cluster beats ranking for the keyword? Yeah, in simple terms, not a lot of people are extremely familiar with the term fan out.
Yeah. So if you ask an AI, what running shoes are best for men of a certain age, it will perform a search query. It will receive a bunch of results, but then it will perform what we call fan out queries. What are the related searches? What are the best Nike shoes? What are the best running shoes for men over 50? What are the best shoes for people with pronation? These can be very personalized to you. They can just be looking for related queries, but they're trying to build a universe of information to send you. And I think, the statistics show that ranking on the first page of Google or first page of search results gives you about a 33% chance of appearing, in a citation. But when you include fan out queries, all the different searches that they're doing, it comes up to like 80 or 90% within that pool, that universe of searches that you're doing. So you want to rank for the main query, and you want to rank for fan out, or we can just call them related queries
Yeah,
to keep it grounded in the SEO universe,
awesome.
if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Let's talk about how AI actually reads a page, right?
Ah,
Massively important. Uh,
yes.
AI ready structure scored an 8.6. Clear headings, tables, lists. Are we moving away from like prose heavy blogging into an era where data density and scannability rule?
Yeah, it very possibly. So Dan Petrovic did some really interesting research around how Google Gemini retrieves information from web pages. And what he found was each page has a budget of so many characters, tokens, whatever you want to, however you want to refer to it. And the lower down you rank, the smaller your budget is. So if you rank at the top, number one for the query, it will pull a certain amount of information, but it won't pull the whole page. It will pull certain sections of the page. So the information at the top has a higher likelihood of getting pulled. And then the further down you rank, you get less and less. So you want to put your important information probably near the top, and you want to structure it just like you said, with clear headings and answers. If you have your heading up here, and but the answer to the question is way down here, you're making AI do a lot of work to pull those two
Yeah.
sections together. So you want to keep your information, tightly structured, question answer, question answer, question answer. That has a higher likelihood of being pulled by the AI within your budget. And you got to do that in a way that keeps it usable and readable for your users too. I like a lot of pros, but that doesn't always work well with SEO or AI
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons.
Actually, on this topic, so you scored factually specific an 8.3 and explicit phrasing an 8.1. Your protein example was perfect. 0.8 grams per kilogram beats adults need a lot of protein. Why do engines reward the specific claim so much more?
Yeah, so you have to think about it like AI is looking for, when they cite you, they are looking for evidence. They're not just looking
Yeah.
for, vague claims. They're citing you because you're supporting the answer they're giving. So the more specific you can be, the more facts you can cite, the more you can cite your own evidence. This is why we did this. This is why. That gives the AI a reason to cite you, as opposed to just vague claims. So being factually specific, being explicit, being clear, those give AI a reason to cite you and to trust you.
Couldn't be clearer. All right, 2 more sections, and then you're off the hook. But I certainly enjoy this conversation so far. Thanks so much for sharing this great information, Cyrus. Let's talk about the over-optimization trap and the quality rater's view. On Edge of the Web, you warned about the over-optimization trap. The question I really would like to have answered: what's one SEO best practice from 5 years ago that will absolutely get a site ignored by AI crawlers today?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'd take a step back and say, how has Google shifted its algorithm in ranking pages? I think one of the biggest shifts we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years are sites that try to rank for everything. That just doesn't work anymore. If we see it with software sites trying to rank for every conceivable keyword, and most of those sites have just dropped in traffic. So what we're seeing today, what Google is rewarding, seems to be very tight topical focus. And working with clients, we actually advise them to niche down a little bit and be very specific in their expertise and what they're talking about. And that bleeds over into AI answers, because if you don't rank, you don't generally get cited. So sticking within your tight topical focus used to be a strategy that works. Now we have to niche down and be very specific with what we talk about in order to rank. That's certainly one. But if I can talk about this a little bit more, I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen Google have an explicit anti-SEO bias in its algorithm. You used to get penalized for having too many exact match keywords, not penalized, just it didn't work. But I think we're seeing that a lot more, with too many internal links, too much exact match, anchor text, title tags that are a little bit too clickbaity. We see boring sites tend to rank a little bit better. Sites that aren't trying too hard with their SEO tend to perform better than the sites that are a little over aggressive with it. And I think that's important to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Another question in this section here. So your new play is non-scalable, person-focused content, real images, primary tests, your own video, etc. That's the heart of what I call EEAT: experience, expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness. In my opinion, probably the most important signal if you want to show up in AI search or search in general. How do you operationalize non-scalable without burning out?
Yeah, so I think there's one simple step that folks can take when creating content, and it's the evidence cycle. When you make a claim in your content, you need to show how you got that information. And this is incredibly important to Google and AI. So if you claim that you are the best company at manufacturing widgets, you need a claim in there. This is why we are the best company at manufacturing widgets. We've been awarded these awards. We've been recognized by the government as doing this. Here's our manufacturing process. Here's a picture of us manufacturing these widgets. So every claim should have evidence. Every page should have evidence. And it's something that's pretty simple to do. You just have to put it on the page so that the AI and Google can recognize your evidence and see that you actually did the thing that you did. So that's a really helpful step.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about measuring what matters. So I loved your Reddit framing of an AI recommending a brand like Hoka for hiking boots versus citing a source. Can you please unpack that for a smaller brand with lower domain authority?
Yeah, it's really interesting you talk about this topic. I was recently at a search conference, and the number one question everybody had was attribution. How do we measure
Yeah.
what's going on? And I'm going to admit to you, there are no clear answers for anybody yet. I believe everybody should set up some sort of SEO tracking. I don't think they need to track 1,000 prompts, because prompts can get very specific and you don't get a lot of answers from being overly specific. But set up some sort of visibility tracking, measure your traffic and conversions from AI. Google doesn't make it very easy to whatever degree it is, but start thinking in different terms. Raw traffic isn't as important as it was back in the day. So many clients that we work with have seen drops in Google organic traffic, but they're doing great still because they're getting the right kind of traffic. And AI and Google has done a very good job of finishing that last step. But just keeping in mind that the evaluation phase for customers used to happen on your website. It's now a lot of that evaluation is happening in AI itself. They don't come to your website until they're ready to make a purchase or a commitment. So just seeing how you appear in AI, that's how we want to shift our thinking. That feeding the AI the correct information and looking at that visibility as opposed to focusing exactly on our website is how we want to probably think about it.
Yeah, and so the leads that we get through, large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, etc., those leads are actually even better qualified, in my opinion, than
Yeah.
the ones that found us, through traditional Google, because they have done a lot of research up front, right? They're telling me, hey, I found you as, a trusted international AI SEO expert. And, I looked up your company and, blah, blah, blah. So I completely agree with that. And that's in line with us getting more and more leads through, AI search. So yeah. Less traffic, not necessarily bad.
Yeah,
Actually,
exactly. Because your brand is still there. They're just not doing it on your website.
exactly. Yeah. Actually, let's talk about that very briefly. Brand entity trust scored a 6.8. Domain authority only a 5, which was very surprised. And you found the DA relationship was often weak. Is domain authority losing its throne?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit. To be upfront, a lot of these papers looked at domain authority,
Yeah.
and there was often a relationship, a weakly correlated relationship. So it's not dead. I think it has more to do with just, again, ranking in Google is correlated, and domain authority is correlated with that. But yeah, these things matter, but they're not a guarantee. And they were a little, as you said, it's kind of surprising how weak they are, but they do matter. They're just not as important as they once were, perhaps. I'm not sure. I'm kind of exploring this myself.
Or maybe we need to have another conversation in a year from now, see where we're at, right? Cool. One more question, and then we'll get into rapid fire real quick.
Okay.
So the one that might start a fight, structured data scored only a 5.6. Yet you noted nearly every study finds a small but consistent positive effect. Give us the honest read, please. Worth the effort or not?
Oh my gosh. So many SEOs like to fight about this.
Yeah.
Like LLMs can't read schema or I think it's a kind of a silly argument. As you said, every study showed a slight correlation with higher AI citation visibility for sites that use structured data. Structured data is beneficial for showing up in Google rich results, rich features, all that. So I would just say continue to use structured data. It can help you in many, many ways. It might help with AI visibility. There's evidence that some AI systems, especially Google, can read your structured data anyway. So go ahead and use it. There's no harm. And it seems to be correlated with better results. So go ahead. We don't need to know if LLMs can read it exactly. I think it's kind of a silly argument.
Awesome. It was a fascinating study. Again, the link right below in the description field of this YouTube video. Cyrus, are you already working on a next research project?
I have about 3 projects in the fire right now, so I don't know what I'm going to publish next.
And I'll be pinging you once those papers come out. We'll probably have another chat, hopefully. Let's get into the rapid fire. Wine or beer?
Wine, 100%.
Wow, very good. Dogs or cats?
I gotta go cats.
Beach or mountain?
Mountain.
Indian or Chinese food?
Indian.
Claude or ChatGPT for your own daily research or another tool?
I know this is a rapid fire, but I've been using ChatGPT since they came out, and I'm just starting to dip my toes into Claude, but I have a feeling I'm switching all the way over.
Oh man, hands down, everything is built around Claude here at BSM and Chris Raulf AI SEO. I couldn't live without it anymore. Not getting paid for that endorsement. Cyrus, this has been exactly the conversation I hoped for. You took 54 studies most of us would never have the patience to read and turn them into something a working SEO can act on Monday morning. Cyrus, where can people find you, grab the study and that AI citation checklist, and who do you work with? Give us the quick rundown here, please.
Yeah, so you can find me on obviously LinkedIn, but also my newsletter is Zyppy Signal on Substack. Please subscribe; it helps me out to do this research, and subscriptions are free. So I also do a limited amount of client work. My client roster is pretty full at the moment, but you never know what will happen in the future. And Chris, thank you for having me on the show. I always appreciate talking with you.
Cyrus, this was awesome. I look forward to our next conversation. Again, Chris Raulf here, listening to the AI SEO Insider podcast. As always, stay safe and healthy, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much, Cyrus.
Thank you, Chris.